Not everyone's life follows the traditional script: college, career, marriage, kids, white picket fence, dog. Some of us take detours, pause chapters, and rewrite the whole story. I remember a friend telling me that she was 38 and starting over after a divorce, watching everyone else live the life that she once thought she'd have. What she discovered? There's joy even in the chapters that you didn't plan. And I think the takeaway from that is that your life doesn't need to look like anyone else's to be meaningful or beautiful. She realized that she hadn't counted on being divorced at 38, but she realized, you know what? There's joy even in these chapters that I didn't plan. And so we can't compare our lives to other people's. Our life doesn't need to look like anyone else's to be meaningful. Lesson number one: your timeline doesn't have to match anyone else. So, y'all, my cousin got married at 45 years old. Um, People tried to make her feel like, she had missed the boat. And um, when she finally did get married, she realized that she married the right person at the right time. And so, she laughed and she said, Kimberly, I may have been late to what some people call late, but I was right on time for my life. And I think the takeaway from that is that life's milestone, they aren't races. There's no deadline for love, no deadline for career, no deadline for happiness. They aren't races. It's all in what your life is supposed to yield at a particular time. So what comes for me at a certain age may not come for you at that same age, but that's okay. What you are doing at that point in time in your life is what's supposed to be happening at that time in your life. Lesson number two: finding joy in life detours. Um, I remember an old coworker of mine. He was an older gentleman, and he got fired from our company after 20 years, being 20 years at that same company. And of course, he told me he felt like, when that happened, he was like, I feel like my life is over. Like, this is all I've known for 20 years. Like, going to the same job every day, the same way to driving the same work, same way to work every day. This is all I know. And, I feel like my life is crumbling down, crumbling, right before my eyes. And he opened up a coffee shop, and he said, Kimberly, you know what? I never would have done this if life hadn't pushed me out of my comfort zone. And I could definitely relate to him. I could relate to him because I was never fired from a job, but some years ago, over 15 or 20 years ago, I was laid off for the first time, and I was traumatized, y'all. Like, I was like, "Oh my gosh. Like, what am I going to do?" Like, I've never been laid off, and I had a good severance cuz I had been there for a while. So I had some time to chill and figure out what I wanted to do next. And I ended up starting my own event planning business, and it was amazing. Like, I had great customers, was getting great clientele. But like him, like, I would have never did that, had life not pushed me outside of my comfort zone. If you would have told me when I started that job that I would be venturing out and starting my own event planning business, I would have laughed in your face. Like, I would have been crying laughing in your face. But, you know, I think the takeaway from that is that detours often lead to destinations we didn't even know we needed. And I think that's beautiful. Lesson number three: redefining success on our own terms. Um, a friend of mine left a six-figure job to teach art at a community center. She left a six-figure job to teach art at a community center. And she said she makes half of the money, but she's doubled in her peace. Isn't that amazing? Like she makes half of the money, but she's doubled in her piece. So when she was making those six figures, she was unhappy. And I witnessed it. She was unhappy. She was always on the go, away from her family, um, stressed. She had, some health issues, due to the stress. And people didn't understand. But she told me, I stopped chasing other people's version of success. Isn't that powerful? She stopped chasing other people's version of success. And I think that a lot of times we need to go back and redefine what success actually looks like for us, because we are taking on other people's definition of success, and we are driving our bodies into the ground, causing sicknesses and diseases in our bodies because we have attached ourselves to someone else's version of success when that's not what success looks like for us or should look like for us. So taking the time to redefine what success look like for us is a win and is a must. And I think the takeaway from that is that success isn't always status or salary. It's living a life that feels true to you. Lesson number 4, letting go of comparison. I remember a lady once told me that she shut down her Facebook page for like 6 months, because seeing everybody's like highlight reels and what was going on in their life made her feel like um, she was losing at life, like she was losing in her own life. And so she said when she came back, she chose to follow like travel bloggers, artists, and writers, like instead of like her old classmates. And she stopped comparing and started dreaming again. And I think the takeaway from that is that comparison kills joy. And we have to curate what we consume so it inspires rather than pressures us. So, examining what we consume so that it inspires us and not drains us. And I think that's a beautiful life lesson. Lesson number 5, um, embracing career or life changes later than expected. One of my coworkers, I remember it like it was yesterday. She was 50 years old at the time, and she decided to go back to school. And she said she sat in class with kids that were her kids' age, but she didn't care because she was doing it for herself. And she graduated at 54, grinning down the aisle with her cap and gown. And she said it wasn't too late, it was right on time for her. And I think the takeaway from that is starting over isn't failure, it's courage in action. And to be honest with you, I finished, I had gone to college, finished, completed some courses, and then stopped. But it wasn't until the pandemic that I actually completed my courses and graduated, with my bachelor's degree in psychology. So it's never too late, it's never too late. You just have to get the courage to do it and not worry about what others would say because you are older. Lesson number 6, choosing peace over perfect. My neighbor, I remember, she's so sweet. She downsized to a smaller apartment after she got divorced. And she said people were, pitying her, but she said she's never been happy. She said there's less stuff, less stress, but more peace. And I said, Amen, sister. I high fived her because at the end of the day, like you want peace. Like, the older I get, I'm 51 years old. The older I get, like peace is my goal, not all of this extra excess stuff, And I think the takeaway from that is that sometimes joy comes when you stop chasing appearances and start embracing peace. And I think that's so powerful. Like we want to put up appearances. Like what if she would have stayed in that big house and she could no longer afford it? And I'm not in her pocket, so I'm not saying that she couldn't afford it. But what if she would have stayed in that house and she could no longer afford it, and she's, robbing Peter to pay Paul, because, you know, she wants it to appear like, oh, I got a divorce, but I still got it all together. See, I'm still living in my big house. I still got my cars and, all of that. No, she chose peace. She was like, I don't care what nobody thinks. Like, I'm moving in this apartment with less stuff, but I got more peace, you know? So, lesson number 7, finding community outside of the norms. Um, a friend of mine, she never had kids, but mentors dozens of teens at her church. And she said, Kimberly, motherhood just looks different for me, but it doesn't mean that it's less meaningful. And I think that that's so powerful. Like, you know, um, I didn't know whether or not I would have a child or not. I had 5 miscarriages before I had my daughter, who is now 13. I had 5 miscarriages. And so I didn't know if motherhood would look the way that I thought it would look. Um, but that didn't mean that it would be less meaningful. Like my friend said, she is a mother to those teens at church. Those kids adore her, they love her. She shows up for them in so many ways. And in so many ways, she's like a second mom to them. And so, the saying that, it takes a village to raise children. And so she's a part of those parents' village. And she loves it. It fulfills her. She feels like it's a part of her purpose in life. And I think the takeaway from that is family and community can be created in unconventional ways that still bring purpose and love. So, family and community can be created in unconventional ways, and that's okay. Lesson 8, turning pain into purpose. A woman I met started a nonprofit for domestic violence survivors after leaving an abusive marriage. And she said, my pain became the thing that gave my life meaning. The takeaway from that is that the hardest chapters often become the most powerful parts of our story. And I am a living witness to that. Like, I um, was diagnosed with OCD, which gave me um, incredible intrusive thoughts, and where the thoughts had me checking my husband's phone, like thinking my husband was cheating on me, and all of that. And it was just a hard chapter in my life. And but it's one of the most powerful parts of my story. Like, it's whenever I tell this story, like, it resonates with people. People can identify with it. And so turning our pain into purpose, I think that's so important, to realize that the things that we go through in life are not just for us, but there's somebody else. It feels lonely and isolated at the time. Like when I had my 5 miscarriages, that felt lonely and isolated. When I went through checking my husband's phone and stalking a girl that I thought that he liked, and just seeing myself spiral with these thoughts, experiencing church hurt, having experiencing depression and all of that. It seems dark at the time. It seems lonely and isolated at the time. But once you get on the other side of that pain, you realize, like, oh, like I went, because you'll meet somebody who's going through depression just like you did. So you'll be able to speak to that. And it's no greater reward than being, if you're going through depression, talking to somebody else that went through depression, because they can really identify, they can really speak to what you're dealing with. Okay, so lesson 9, celebrating small wins along the way. um my cousin, she's so funny. She started clapping for herself every time she paid off a little bit of debt. I love that girl so much. Like, she is into celebrating the small wins. And so she said, Kimberly, look, girl, like, I may not be rich, but I'm proud of every step forward. And so I commend her and salute her for that. And I think the takeaway from that is big joy is built on small, consistent victories. Big joy is built on small, consistent victories. And so she was consistent, and, she paid off her debt a little bit at a time. And eventually now she's debt free, but um, she just took small steps and, had consistent victories until it was paid off. Lesson number 10: why your pain is still beautiful. My friend told me that her life doesn't look like the movies, but it's hers, and that's what makes it beautiful. The takeaway from that is the beauty of your story isn't in how conventional it is, it's how authentic it feels to you. So remember that. Life may not follow the path you expected it, but joy isn't canceled just because the script changed. Sometimes the detours lead to the best chapters of all. And that is so true. I found that to be so true. All of my detours in my life have become the best chapters because I've learned some very valuable lessons. I've learned a lot about Kimberly. Um, I've learned a lot about vulnerability and transparency. I've learned a lot about healing, and it's become the best chapters of all. So I hope that these lessons helped you. I want to hear from you in the comments. I want you to talk to me about, how your pain, how you see your pain as being beautiful. If this video has helped you, I want you to spread it and share with somebody else. And guess what? I love you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.